This is Amy Hutchins at the Special Collection Center at the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm here with Emily Steiner, who's a member of the English faculty here, and we are sitting with LJS 266.
This is a long, very beautiful manuscript, and it's a incomplete 15th century French universal history, written in French, so likely made for a French or English or possibly Franco-Flemish reader.
And we know that it stayed in French hands because in a later century, a
newly minted marquis
had no problem adding his own name to this handwritten page.
You can see the Marquis de Molac there in the center.
And he was later the governor of Nantes. Right?
He did well.
Right. None of the other pages look like this. This is a more typical page. And all that's left of the luxury of the first page are the initials, which are still illuminated, and there's gold, and those are quite nice, and they continue through the manuscript. But the level of the diagrams is really different.
Yeah, they're really surprisingly different, and in other universal chronicles like this, especially a chronicle of French kings, we would expect these roundels to be more delicately executed, that someone might have at the very least used a compass, where these are clearly done sort of freehand, which doesn't diminish the interest of it. They're not illustrated, which they might be in other universal chronicles like this. What we found out from Lisa Fagan Davis, who studies manuscripts of this kind, that the 29 other known manuscripts of this text are mainly rolls, and where ours, as you can see, is a codex, doing some of the heavy lifting of rolls and trying to come up with some kind of accommodation to that form.
And one way that it does that I find really interesting is that the diagram covers both pages. So you're looking at the opening as a complete unit, at least visually. The text still runs down one side and then the other, but the diagram crosses across the middle, and so you've got related information on both sides of the opening.
On this page, we're in biblical history at the page of the patriarchs. So you can see Isaac up at the top, and you can see this lovely diagram of the 12 tribes here.
Which, one thing to say about that is that that's a different kind of circle than the circle that's in the diagram. It's not actually attached. It's there to provide additional information that also happens to be in a circular format.
And as we'll see later in the manuscript, these roundels provide all kinds of information, not just little blurbs about who's who in medieval history. One of the things that we also noticed about this manuscript is that there are, here we are in Troy, that there are quite a number of roundels that are not inscribed with anyone's name, mysteriously. And what we realized was that, at least it seems to be in most cases, that there are meant to be women's names in here. So here we are on the Troy page on the sons of Priam, sons and daughters of Priam. And so we could immediately see who is missing.
Right, so first, this is probably meant to be Hecuba, his wife, no name. Underneath it, the sons are all filled in, so Hector's there, and Deiphobus and Helenus.
And Paris.
And Troilus. And then you have the blank circle, and that would be Cassandra.
And so we're curious to see why that's the case. And in other roles, sometimes a rubricator has come back and written the female names in red, although there are other instances in this manuscript where female names have been written in. So we don't know it's a curious mystery about this manuscript that we have not yet solved. So this gives us information about the city of Troy. Some of the larger roundels tell us about how different cities inherit the glory as rather than individuals. And there's two branches coming from here. And one branch tells us that this is Aeneas's branch. So here he is sort of fleeing from Troy on his branch. And later on that branch will indicate who his descendants are. But there's a second branch that's coming from Troy that tells us that there were many cities that took up the mantle of Troy in Western Europe, founded by the descendants of Aeneas and the descendants of Priam. One of those here being Sicambra, which is the city founded by Priam's son Helenus, and is important to this manuscript because it's the city where the Franks first started to rule.
And another question that this page raises in terms of being an unfinished manuscript is whether perhaps illuminations were meant to go inside these double ringed rondels that are larger and have space for that.
Absolutely. Like you could see how this would be a perfect space for a rendition of Troy here and of Aeneas right here, and it seems to be some wasted space. Over here you can see that one of the branches that come from Aeneas, Silvius Aeneas, the father of Brut, is connected here to the city of London. Here you can say the Cité de Londres, which Brutus and his descendants found in a legendary history founded.
And the branches are another way that this book tries to deal with not being a roll. If you could just run it all vertically from top to bottom, they'd still have problems sort of trying to tell multiple stories at the same time, but they wouldn't have to kind of go off the bottom of the page or around the corner onto the next page.
And then the thing that's probably most important to this text, which is true of medieval national histories in general, is proving that a particular dynasty has the right claim to the throne. In this case, it's the Valois dynasty, which sort of had a fairly shaky claim to the throne. A lot of people had to be passed over, and a lot of people had to die for the Valois to take charge. And on this last page, we see the first group of Valois, and one of the branches here, coming off from Charles Le Valois, tells us that what we should expect to find in the rest of the manuscript, but we don't get because it ends, are the descendants of Charles VI of France, and then eventually Charles VII. And he did have a lot of children, and he would have been right here. But then there's this very peculiar other branch that doesn't do anything that the other branches do, and sort of opens up another mystery for us. And this is the branch right here, which tells us that one of the Valois descendants, John, Duke of Burgundy, also called John Sans Peur, without fear, the fearless, and doesn't have any descendants that are important for the Valois dynasty, destroyed the people of Liège in battle. And that's a very topical note, and that helped, and we trace that branch to a story about John of Burgundy, who came to the aid of his brother-in-law, the Bishop of Liège, John the Pitiless, who had indeed destroyed a rebellion by the people of Liège.
In 1408.
In 1408. So we know that this text is post-1408, which was an important discovery.
But compared to other manuscripts that cover the same kind of material, it's likely, and it itself planned to go further, so it's likely that it is at least from the second quarter of the 15th century, even though the chronicle doesn't make it up that far.
So we're curious to find out more about this reader who would have been so invested in this particular controversy.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Amy.